Before we dive into the hottest news topics, if you love Flash Drive, make sure you're following us on Spotify and Apple to know as soon as any new content drops.
What a week it's been already, Flash Drivers. Superfish Kyle Chalmers has admitted it's been hard to enjoy his success in the pool because of media scrutiny out of it. We're a step closer to the Indigenous Voice being enshrined in the Constitution, but how minute or mighty is the step really? Plus, the end of an era as the country farewells some well-known neighbours.
Hold on, J.Law, hold on. Stop the records. Stop everything.
What's up?
You're back.
I'm back.
Where the hell have you been?
Well,
it's been a fortnight. What the heck?
And I'll crank up Destiny's Child, I'm a Survivor, because I've made it through. I was at Splendour in the grass.
That's not what it's called.
Splendor
Use its real name.
Le Mud.
That's right.
As everyone's been referring it to.
Yes.
Some have even gone so far as to call it Fire Festival Australian Edition. I think that's maybe a little harsh. But
do you?
Yeah, I do. But yeah, I was one of those gumbooted souls wading through mud for a couple of days up in Byron Bay.
Now, I have let the Flash Drivers know. I was checking in on you over the last fortnight because your absence was noted. And the guests that we had on, Andrew Bucklow and Rowdy Walden,
who were brilliant, I should say.
They were fantastic, but they were also completely perplexed by why you would even consider going to Splendour in the Mud in the first place. Would you like to set the record straight? Why did you want to go?
Because it's a good time. It's a good time. Like, actually, music festivals is like my idea of the best time ever.
Is it?
Yeah. Have a few drinks, go see some great bands. Mm-hmm. I mean, I prefer drier conditions.
Yes. Yes. Okay, let's talk about it. Just how many layers of mud were caked upon you throughout the days?
Yeah, well, look, I'm so glad that I was one of the people who found some gumboots before I left because they were scarce as hen's teeth, but Kmart sorted me out. Not a sponsor, but, give us a ring, Kmart.
Love you, Kmart.
Love you. But they saved me. So, like the jeans took a couple of washes to get clean. But, yeah, I mean, there was, this much, a good foot of mud, in some of the worst, worst spots.
Just mud that you were wading through.
I think it was just mud.
Okay.
I don't know. It just smelt like a farm a little bit.
What was your favourite bit? Because you did genuinely have a good time.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I'm not putting on rose-coloured glasses.
No, which I apologise for my pure baffledom because it just is something that I would not find fun. But I'm happy that you did have a good time.
I did. Well, I saw the Strokes. They were amazing.
Yes.
Australian artist Genesis Owusu was amazing. Saw Glass Animals play. It was a good time.
So you do it again?
I would. I'm not sure any of my friends would do it again. We had a group of about 10, and by day 3, our party had shrunk down to 3.
Yeah.
Because people were just a bit off it.
Okay. Did you see any of the idiots that were diving into the mud?
No, I only saw them on social, but there's some dirty folks walking around. The funniest bit was, so the Splendor main stage is in a natural amphitheatre, so it has these sloping sides, which ordinarily is great to just stand on, but because of the rain, it was just a mudslide, and so like watching people trying to walk up to the bars up the hill was pretty funny.
Perilous conditions.
It was. In fact, my friend was filming them, and she put what she filmed to the Benny Hill music. So that gives you a bit of a picture of what it was like.
I mean, I've probably watched that because I consumed so much content of Splendour in the Mud. It was one of my favourite stories of the year.
Schadenfreude, that's called.
Yes. Not that I take joy in other people's pain. However, it just seemed like so much effort. But I'm glad to have you back, and I'm glad that you were back with us on Flash Drive this week. Thank you.
All right, let's get back into it. I'm James Law.
And I'm Georgie Tunny.
And this is Flash Drive.
J.Law, it would be really remiss of me to welcome you back in any other way other than starting with your favourite subject, which is sport.
Of course. Nation's foremost authority on the subject.
I mean, I believe that's your Twitter bio. Like, don't quote me on that, Flash Drivers. Don't check either, but I'm pretty sure. Now, but what I want to talk about is the running battle that we've seen this week between champion swimmer Kyle Chalmers And he's had this ongoing war of words and animosity with the media at the Commonwealth Games. It's not stopped him winning.
No.
However, it may have stopped him enjoying winning.
Kyle Chalmers has opened up on the mental toll this Commonwealth Games campaign has had on him. Chalmers has been in the spotlight after accusations he failed to congratulate his ex-girlfriend, none other than Emma McKeon, after the Aussies claimed that gold in the mixed relay on the opening night of competition. He also shut down rumours of a rift in the team, with McKeon now dating ex-pop star turned Aussie swim team member Cody Simpson. Chalmers says the spotlight on the issue made him not want to swim at the Com Games anymore.
Things have now progressed further as well, J.Law, with Chalmers admitting it was hard to enjoy the moment. Now, that moment was victory, gold medal in the 100-metre freestyle, individual freestyle race. So that is the pet event for any swimmer, really. That is the glamour event, shall we say, of the sport. And he said that he couldn't really enjoy it because so much of the conversation, the reporting this week has surrounded his private life and speculation that there's this rift between his ex, who just so happens to be another superfish in Emma McKeon, and her new partner, Cody Simpson.
Juicy.
It is really juicy. But what do you make of it? Do you feel for him?
Look, I think, to turn in that kind of performance in the pool and still not to be able to enjoy it, it's so much hard work. So I certainly feel for him if that's the way he's feeling, and he's done some really detailed posts about how this has affected his mental health and really affected the way he looks at the sport and his role in the team. That sucks for him.
Yeah.
But
he still is very young. I think because, as we usually see with swimmers, they start their careers so early. He won gold in Rio at 18.
Incredible.
So he's only 24 right now and going through all of this on this huge world stage.
You'd hope it doesn't push him out of it. But look, I haven't followed this close enough to know. He rejects this this reporting, it's gossip reporting about a perceived love triangle between McKeon, Simpson and himself.
Yes.
Is it all just a beat up?
I don't think it is, because even with gossip reporting, it is my view that there's no gossip without at least some kind of remnant. Someone's followed the nose somewhere and they've gone, oh, maybe those people aren't really getting along. It seems to be a little bit frosty between the trio. And I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing. Have reporters taken it too far in this context at this huge world event? I think there's an argument to say yes. Yes, they have, because all of the focus really in the questions for Kyle Chalmers over the weekend, including in the 4x100 metre freestyle relay, which Team Australia won, all of the questions for that team centred around Kyle Chalmers and what was happening out of the pool and whether or not he'd congratulated his ex Emma McKeon in a race the previous night. So much so that one of the competitors in that relay team, William Yang, asked if he could leave because no one was really asking him any questions. So he's like, do I have to be here in this mixed area where the journos are asking, can I go? And I'm pretty sure he did, and no one really noticed. So I do think that that's gone too far. Do I think that they have the best relationship? Probably no. But I am basing this off the reporting that I've seen. I don't have a direct line to Cody Simpson, Emma McKeon and Kyle Chalmers.
Well, they are exes, so I'm sure they're not best buddies.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the thing as well when it comes to swimming. Relationships between swimmers is nothing new. Remember the days of Eamon Sullivan and Steph Rice. There's always going to be these glamour couples. And it just so happens that Kyle Chalmers has been involved with Emma McKeon, who is our most decorated Olympian and now the most successful Commonwealth Games athlete of all time.
Incredible.
It's insane what she can do. And you add in a pop star of global fame who is now a swimmer in Cody Simpson. Of course there's going to be interest there. Of course, even people who may not necessarily like anything about sport or swimming, but they like Cody Simpson, so they're going to have an opinion. They're going to follow this story. They're going to want to know. So I understand where some of the reporting has come from. They want that clickbait, as I'm pretty sure Kyle Chalmers has referred to it. But of course, the emotional toll and the personal toll that takes, it has to take it somewhere. It has to land somewhere for them. Interestingly, I do see the other side, because a lot of the opinion there's been some opinion, and in particular one piece from Andrew Webster, which I know we've both read this week, that said that maybe Kyle Chalmers needs to cop it and needs to suck it up and is having some sour grapes at not being the number one attraction anymore with the swim team. My argument with that would be, was he ever the number one attraction? Mm. Because maybe when he was an 18-year-old, yes, but like in the team right now, Ariane Titmus is the golden girl, the golden swimmer of the Dolphins squad. Mm-hmm. You know, like not even Emma McKeon would get as much, at least, you know, corporate commercial opportunities as Ariane Titmus. Mm. So I'm not sure if that's necessarily fair for him to have assumed this alpha dog status and now is just upset that he's not alpha dog anymore.
Not getting the credit he deserves.
Yeah. But what do you think about this fine line between sports stars being celebrities?
Well, I think it comes with the territory, and I think sometimes swimmers can be a bit boring, you know. But they just like,
how dare you?
Like a swimmer's life sounds like hell, right? They get up at 6 a.m. and then they swim, and they have a muesli bar, and then they swim again, and then they go to the gym, and then they swim again, and then they eat, and they swim again, and they swim again. Like that's their life, right?
Yeah.
And I remember like back in the day, and you'd be like, you know, there's nothing interesting about Kieren Perkins. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if there's a bit of drama, you know, I'm not against that. But, you know, I do wonder whether I think that Chalmers' responses, you know, have been well expressed and obviously probably well tightly held by him and honestly held. I think he's telling the truth of how he really feels, but I'm not sure it's doing him any favours because like then that's another headline. Yeah. And then like the next, you know, outburst is another headline where, you know, media management 101, he'd probably be better just to like close his mouth and cop it and like, you know, grin and bear it and let his swimming speak for himself.
Then he becomes a Kieren Perkins though.
Well, I'm talking about, so for me, I don't want any Kieren Perkins. I want some spiciness.
Yes.
But for him, probably the best thing would be just to grin and bear it.
Well, that's something that he's admitted as well. And I think you're right because he's talked about not being in control of the narrative anymore, more essentially, and being like, you know, when things are happening, if there's family issues or, you know, there's form issues, personal issues, you were in control of that. Whereas the last week for him, everything's kind of been out of his control. And you're talking about professional athletes here who are in control of every single thing that they can be in control of in their life to make sure that they perform at their best. So I think that is a little bit of a, for want of a better word, mindfuck for him, which it would be probably for anyone, but it's at this extra level, this heightened level because of who he is, what he's doing right now. And hopefully he just has the good people around him.
Yeah, well, hasn't he burned through a couple of different managers and stuff? So maybe that could be part of it.
Well, this is the thing as well, because there are critics of his too, which is saying if you can't handle, I mean, for one, please excuse this analogy that I'm going to use, but if you can't handle the heat, get out of the water, right?
Yeah.
Because he is an imposing figure. He's got the tattoos. He's got the diamond earrings. He's got the mustache now. Like, he does come across as someone who wants you to look at him, wants you to take notice of him. His idol growing up was James Magnuson,
right? Who
was very similar for people who, swimming fanatics who may remember him. He literally had the alpha symbol tattooed on his arm. So when you talk such a big game, you do have to then be able to cop any kind of criticism. But I think this has gone to a level that's maybe just too far for what usual expectations would be.
Well, like I say, I like a bit of fireworks and pools, so that's all right.
No, you go.
But before we move on from sport chat, which is my favourite chat, I know that you wanted to give a shout out to some women sports people.
Yes, the Lionesses. So this, J.Law, as I know that you already know this, but it's England's national football team. So England has had this journey when it comes to football and its men's team carrying on because it's never won a major tournament in like 60 years or something. And they've always got this song, Football's Coming Home, and all this. And they thought they were going to win it in Euro 2020 when they went to a penalty shootout against Italy and everything ended in tears. They didn't. That didn't happen. However, the Lionesses trusted, let's leave it to the women, to get shit done. So they have been able to bring football home because they defeated Germany 2-1 in the final at Wembley for Euro 2022, and there were 87,192 people there, which is significant because, one, massive number, two, the biggest crowd across men's and women's football at that tournament.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very
huge, huge. And hopefully just indicative of when you invest in women's sport and you give it the platform, you give it the time, you give it the opportunity, you give it the resources, people will watch it. Mm-hmm. This is not a flash in the pan now, but it has, and it's not a success, an overnight success. This has taken years, decades, but we're finally seeing the fruits of all of that labour. And it was so wonderful to see just how much it meant to the current England players, but also the women who've come before them. So quick, shout out to the Lionesses.
Love that.
Yeah,
Love that.
So excited for the Women's World Cup next year. Remember, Flash Drivers, if you're loving the podcast, let us know. Subscribe and leave 5-star reviews, only 5-star reviews. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Everyone needs to be across the news of the week.
Moving on, and it was a historic weekend at the Garma Festival in the Northern Territory. Our new PM, Anthony Albanese, unveiled his plan for a referendum to enshrine an Indigenous voice to Parliament.
Today I reaffirm my government's solemn promise to implement the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full. The voice will exist and endure outside of the ups and downs of election cycles and the weakness of short-term politics.
Now, before we commence this chat, J.Law, it's important for us to acknowledge that we are painfully aware that we are two white people discussing the merit of this proposition. But given that Australia will be asked to vote in a referendum on the matter, to help everyone make an informed decision, that's what we're hoping to do today and help with that by breaking down what we know so far. So the wording of a possible question to be taken to a referendum has been revealed.
We should consider asking our fellow Australians something as simple but something as clear as this. Do you support an alteration to the Constitution that establishes an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice?
That goes alongside 3 proposed changes to the Constitution.
1, there shall be a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. 2, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice may make representations to Parliament and the executive government on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And 3, the Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have power to make laws with respect to the composition, functions, powers and procedures of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice.
The key messaging, J.Law, that I took out of this weekend was one of optimism, one of hope, one of celebration, one of recognition. But there were a couple of words that kept coming up from the Prime Minister and his government: straightforward and clear. They're trying to be as straightforward as possible when it comes to the question and the changes to the Constitution that have been proposed, and as clear as possible in what that will mean heading into the referendum that they've promised. How do you think that was received by wider Australia this weekend?
Well, I listened to all of Albanese's speech, went for about 20 minutes. You can listen to the whole thing on Flash and watch it. And I thought it was a really, really good speech. I thought it laid out his hopes for the referendum, his commitment to the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which inspired this. And he was, appealing to Australia's sense of the fair go. And that's what he kind of related it to. And I was convinced by what he had to say. So if you haven't listened to it, give it a listen. He spoke about this being about respect. He spoke about how what we've been doing for decades has not been working. So we need to do something else. And crucially, he said that this was a debate about letting Aboriginal people have a say in their own future. And to me, I hear what's being proposed to go into the Constitution. I hear about the changes that are being put there. To me, it's uncontroversial, and I really hope Australia gets behind it.
One of the other things that he kept saying, Anthony Albanese, this weekend, was that it's just a matter of manners. That's what the term that he kept using to kind of back up what you're saying there. It's just manners to be able to include our First Nations people in the rhetoric of all the decisions that affect First Nations people.
It seems pretty fair
It
enough
seems
to
pretty
me.
fair, right? So one of the biggest talking points I think that has come away from the announcement, though, has been the level or lack of details within it. Now, that's purposeful from Anthony Albanese. He says he doesn't want to go into all of those details. That is for Parliament to debate after a referendum. Do you think that's the right move?
Yes, because I think if you get into the weeds if you go into the voting booth when it's referendum day and there's a lot to read and a lot to unpack and a lot that is confusing, you don't want people to go into a voting booth and be looking at legislation.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That will be too confusing for people. So if it is clear and kind of to the point, it has a much better chance of getting over the line. And I think that everybody wants that. So referenda are very hard to get over the line in Australia because of the way I believe you've got to get a majority of people and a majority of states or something like that. You've got to get all of that to make a change to the Constitution. So it's a big ask, and a lot of times they fail. So I think making it simple and not having too much overwhelming detail will help its cause. Do you think there's enough there for people to understand?
I do, but I'm not sure if that's just me optimistically. Maybe I'm just hoping that it's enough, because there is this something that may detract from it or that could confuse people further, is that there is some contestation. Is that a word? Contestation? Disagreement? Yeah, that's a better word. There is some disagreement even within Indigenous communities about the significance of a voice to Parliament, whether or not they want it, whether or not they don't want it, which I think is important for us to say. You would have to expect not everyone's going to agree with it, right? This was the Liberal Senator Jacinta Price on Q&A earlier this week.
There are Indigenous Australians that don't agree with it, I want to know whether
across
our Prime
a wide
Minister...
range of political
That's
spectrums,
right.
by the way.
I want to know whether our Prime Minister has sat and listened to those people and had those conversations as well. And again, it comes down to this idea of it, like recognition. I think, yeah, you're right. We can all get on board with recognition, but I don't trust a bureaucracy to be enshrined in our Constitution. And less bureaucracy as opposed to more bureaucracy is actually is what creates economic independence, the ability to stand on one's 2 feet, and not just entirely based on what it, identity as an Indigenous person, but simply just as a human being.
So I worry that may confuse people, and it may lead people, well-meaning people, who would be like, yes, First Nations people should totally be in control and have a say in matters that directly affect them, because of course they've got this unique perspective. I worry that they'll then take that to be like, oh, but that actually may not be in their best interests. Then this is what the whole Indigenous voice to Parliament is meant to avoid, right? We're trying to have so that there is a voice at the table so that white people aren't doing all the talking and aren't making decisions for the best of others.
Yeah. Well, look, bureaucracy is not perfect.
Yeah.
And this change in the Constitution probably will not fix every problem.
Absolutely not. Yep.
But a lot of the times that people argue is they say, oh, it's just a symbolic gesture and we'd be better off like funneling more money into healthcare and housing for underprivileged Aboriginal people and things like that. Albo addressed this in his speech and he said it's not a one or the other, right? We could do this as well as trying to continue to address disadvantage in other more direct ways.
Yes.
So one doesn't cancel out the other. So I think it's a step in the right direction. And, you know, sometimes it gets dismissed as symbolism. But to me, symbolism is important, right? You know, if we're going to try to truly close the gap of disadvantage in our Indigenous populations, which is still shocking.
Insane.
It's got to start with some kind of central idea, right? And what's the idea? Is that we're going to include Indigenous people in decision making that affects them. That's the core of it, and I think that that's a good place to start, because you start there and then it can filter down into all these other important practical ways. So it makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, I also think it's important to note that there has already been lots of consultation about forming that question and the changes, the proposed 3 steps changes to the Constitution. And that's something that the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Linda Burney, confirmed.
The design of the voice will happen after respectful, extensive consultation with First Nations people and with the Australian community and across the parliament.
Will it happen after the vote?
No, it will happen before
the referendum.
Before the legislation, the design of the voice will take place.
Yeah, look, I think we can get in the weeds with all the discussion about what will be in it. I need more detail. Who will be the boss of this new organisation? But to me, I think what's important, what will probably get it over the line, is if it kind of gets down to base principles. And so this whole discussion came from what's known as the Uluru Statement of the Heart. So there was a constitutional convention in 2017 where sort of many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were represented, and, you know, they came up with this idea.
Yes.
And also coming out of it was this really succinct statement. It's like less than 500 words that really sums up what this is all about. And I read it today for the first time. I Googled it and looked it up, and I recommend other people do, because it's actually a beautiful document and very well expressed. And actually, when you read it, it's quite emotional. And there's just 2 paragraphs here that I wanted to read out for everyone that, to me, sums up why this is important. So this is quoted from the Uluru Statement of the Heart. Proportionally, we are the most incarcerated people on the planet. We are not an innately criminal people. Our children are alienated from their families at unprecedented rates. This cannot be because we have no love for them. And our youth languish in detention in obscene numbers. They should be our hope for the future. These dimensions of our crisis tell plainly of the structural nature of our problem. This is the torment of our powerlessness. When I read that, that just summed it up for me about what this is about at its core. Do you see what I'm saying?
Closing the gap. I remember when I was in year 12, and you have those year 12 end of year speeches, right? So it's your final assessment. You get to choose whatever topic you wanted. I remember I chose closing the gap. And that was, I'm going to age myself here, that was 13 years ago. And we're still really shit at it. Australia has failed. I think the latest report was that we're failing 2/3. We haven't been able to achieve any of those recommendations. I don't think. We're still falling so far behind.
Still a life expectancy gap of 20 years.
Yeah, which is just absolutely disgusting and embarrassing for Australia. So those words from the Uluru Statement from the Heart just reinforces to me of exasperation, but also the will and the hope that there can still be change, which I think First Nations people are not given enough credit for.
And look, there's some, reason to be hopeful. There was a poll last week from the Australia Institute that said that 65% of people are already on board with this.
Yes.
And that's up from 58%.
Which just actually makes my heart, because my heart just tightens whenever we talk about this, because of course, I don't know if I'm such a doomsayer, but I always go to the worst case scenario. And I'm like, what happens if we go to a referendum? We know that they're so hard to pass. Albanese does not want what happened to the Republic referendum in the late 90s, I think it was,
That's right,
to happen again. What happens if this fails?
That would be, this would push that cause back very, very far. You know, like the referendum on the Republic, you know, that's not going to be on the agenda again until the Queen dies. So I think that would be a great shame for the nation. So but I'm actually hopeful that this will work.
Yes.
I feel like Albo putting it front and centre and speaking from the heart about it. I think, you know, he's got all the right people involved. I'm quite hopeful we can get there.
And to reiterate what the Prime Minister has been saying this weekend, if not now, when?
Love hearing us chew the news fat and analyse the biggest and smallest headlines each week. Make sure you follow us on the socials so you don't miss a moment. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter and YouTube. You can't miss us.
You really can't. We're everywhere.
We're everywhere.
The Neighbours. J.Law, did you have some tears?
Look, not tears.
No?
But I did.
What?
I do have a lot of affection for Neighbours.
Do you?
I do. I was like, well, I feel like you were either a home and away family or a Neighbours family.
Yes.
And we were a Neighbours family for sure.
Okay, but this is the test, okay? This is the test. Channel 10, as an investigative journalist that I am, I've done some deep diving here to just go to the heart of who counts as a Neighbours fan. Because according to Channel 10, you have to pass one big test.
Only the very deepest affection for a TV show could entice people to sit outside and watch when it's only 9 degrees.
Would you suffer through 9 degrees, J.Law, for Neighbours?
Maybe not.
Fair weather fan. Fair weather fan.
But, you know, I think a lot of Aussies will obviously 1.2 million tuned in this week for its final ever episode.
After 37 years.
It's incredible.
Nuts.
And it was a nostalgia fest. Like, did you see it?
So, full disclosure, I have not actually watched the Neighbours finale yet.
Your fiance
I know.
was in it.
I know he was in it.
For people who don't know, Georgie's engaged to Rob Millsy Mills,
Yes.
who played
Finn Kelly, who was one of Ramsay Street's most notorious serial killers. Killed 3 people.
3 people.
3 people. Had what I would like to call like every good soap storyline that you could possibly have. Robert got them. Like he at one stage tried to I think he had a brother he didn't know about, like a long lost brother. He had amnesia.
Ding.
He was pushed off a cliff.
Ding.
He was evil, but then with the amnesia pretended to be a good person again. So he created a new life as a good human.
Affairs?
I don't think he had. Oh, no, he did have affairs. He was
Ding.
in love with Bea. He was Bonnie Anderson, but then was actually in love with her sister, played by Jodie. I can't remember her last name now.
Anasta.
And then Anasta, that's the one. And then he also killed someone with a bow and arrow before trying to kill Susan Kennedy, matriarch of the show, I know, by kidnapping her. And then he ultimately died because he was digging a ditch, aka an open grave, shallow grave, for Susan, to put Susan in. But he tripped over, hit his head, and then drowned because the open grave started filling with water.
I mean, if he had killed Susan.
Right, I know.
The wedding's off.
Right? The wedding's off. The wedding's off. And then he also came back twice as a ghost. So as far
that's
as
the
soap
full
opera
bingo card.
plot lines go. So you say that you were a Neighbours fan. So you were a Neighbours family, not a home and away family.
Mm-hmm.
I was the same.
Yeah.
I was the same. Like, I have not watched the Neighbours finale, but especially I think when I was in high school, I used to come home. It was 6:30.
Yep.
6:30 every weeknight, and I would watch it. So I saw, you know.
Yeah. What was your era? Because everyone has their era.
Yeah, it was. I was there. I caught the Delta Goodrem Born to Try era. I remember that. And I was like, oh, that's a very catchy song. And she became Delta Goodrem.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, I know. Quite talented, that one. And then I remember Donna and Ringo, a.k.a. Margot Robbie and whoever played Ringo. So I was there for that era as well. And that was when they were hanging out with, like, Bridget and Declan, and Liam Hemsworth was in it for a bit in a wheelchair.
Sure.
And so I saw all of that and all the iterations of Dr. Carl warring with Susan and then loving Susan again and then cheating on Susan and then they're back together, married again.
With Izzy.
Yeah, with Izzy. I really liked Izzy. She was one of my favourite characters.
She was back for the finale.
She
was.
I mean, star-studded.
Up to her usual tricks.
Yeah, star-studded. I think Robert was in the finale for, 2 seconds?
Yeah. It was a brief cameo.
He would like it knowing that it was one take.
Oh,
got it in one take. I was like,
done.
didn't you not have any lines? You just had to stare at the camera? He's like, one take, though.
He's a professional.
Professional.
Yeah.
Professional. What was your era? Would be the same era.
Yeah, mine might be a bit earlier because I still had the Billy and Ann era, like people who know Neighbours.
Oh, Jesse Spencer.
Jesse Spencer and
Brooke Satchwell.
Brooke Satchwell, the Satch.
Yeah.
So they were my Kylie and Jason.
Yep. Yeah, no, I always got confused because I know that they're from Neighbours, but I didn't watch any of it. So I was like, I don't know that.
Well, I'll tell you about the ending that was kind of surprising is it threw right back to the first era. So like they had, obviously Kylie and Jason came back.
Yes.
Scott and Charlene. But the people who stole the show was actually Guy Pearce. So he's been getting a lot of credit.
This. Yes.
And you do have to give him credit because he came back and he could have easily just done one of these cameos like Kylie did. So Kylie showed up. They didn't really explain why she was there. And she barely said anything. It just sort of smiled and hugged people.
Yeah. I have seen some clips and without seeing it, I'm like, but what's the overarching thing here? Why are you all back anyway? I'll find out.
They didn't explain why Kylie and Jason came back, really.
Okay.
But Guy Pearce came back and he didn't just do a little cameo. He did like maybe a week's worth of storyline.
Wow.
And really, I think that was, he's a big Hollywood star.
Huge.
But he gave up all this time to do this lovely little story about him falling in love and reconnecting with Jane. And to me, I just give him credit for the fact that he didn't need to do that.
No.
Like, why did he do it? He did it to out of credit for this show that set him up and probably for the fans. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, and when you think about just the star-making machine that has been this television show, incredible. And the for it to just be able to translate across so hugely popularly with the UK, I mean, that was where its number one fan base has been for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I remember I saw there was somewhere on the Tube, the London Tube, they had, like the rail network there, had put up a poem that a fan had written thanking Neighbours, like in the last week. And it was on all of the Tube, like the train.
I love it.
Isn't that's crazy. I would love to broaden this conversation out though, because what was a television show that you both loved the ending and hated the ending? Like, has there been some TV shows that have come to an end and you're like, yeah, it's about time? And other ones that you were like, no, where's the next season?
So the best ending of a show I've ever seen is 6 Feet Under. Have you ever watched that?
Oh, no, but isn't that about like a funeral home? Rachel Griffiths?
Yeah.
Again, see, it's like I've got these random things. I've never seen the show, but I know
good
about
for
it.
trivia.
Yeah.
So that is about, it was about a funeral home. And then, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, it's very old. At the end, all of the main characters, it flashes forward to all of their deaths. And it sounds morbid, but it's actually kind of life-affirming in a strange way. All to the strains of Sia's Breathe Me.
Oh, no.
So,
did that get tears from you?
I'm not a big crier, Georgie.
You didn't cry in that.
No, but...
Oh, my God, I'd be a puddle on the floor. Anything to do with Sia's Breathe Me, I'm like, just the strains.
I'm going to find it for you. Yeah, and even though you don't know any of the characters, you'll be
I'll probably cry.
You'll cry.
I'm that person in Grey's Anatomy that would cry within 2 seconds of meeting the random person that just got hit by a bus. And I was like, oh, no, I knew you for half a second. Tears, fictional character.
Never change. Never change.
Okay, yeah.
So that was a winner. What was a stinker? Let me think on that. What about you?
I'm also trying to think of a series that ended well. Because I can only think of the ones that I can think of, like ones that didn't end well. Like The OC, like don't even bother watching after season 1, really, to be honest. Season 1, amazing.
Yeah. And then
if that was just a standalone season, start to finish, perfection. Seasons 2, 3 and 4, whatever. Like, we don't know them. We don't know them.
Goes off the rails.
Goes off the rails.
Uh-huh.
Goes off the rails. So that was one that, you know, when I was growing up, everyone watched. It was appointment viewing.
Same, yeah.
And then, but I couldn't even tell you what happened at the end because I've just like blocked it. I'm like, no, Seth's sailing off.
Marissa's dead by that
Summer.
point.
Yeah, Marissa's dead.
Another spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler. Sorry, guys, spoiler. Spoiler, that also happened. Gossip Girl. Dan being Gossip Girl, spoiler.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Sorry. Well, that was a big spoiler for J.Law. Dan, who was like the most boring, nerdy one, didn't make any kind of sense, was revealed as Gossip Girl.
The main dude was Gossip Girl.
Yeah, one of the main guys, Penn Badgley, was Gossip Girl. I was like, that makes absolutely no sense. No sense.
Retconning, that's called.
Yeah, terrible. Other than, like, things that end well, I can't even think. Oh, I've not seen, our producer Alan has held up the phone and said Scrubs. Okay. I did not watch Scrubs. You're always judging me. Did you watch Scrubs?
No, sorry.
Sorry. We've let you down.
We've got some homework to do.
Yeah, we've let you down.
And then the most controversial one is The Sopranos.
Oh,
so you know about this?
I think I know it, but I've not seen it.
Yeah, so this was like where they just completely left it open in the air, and the screen sort of goes black, and people thought their TVs were broken.
They're just like, oh God.
But it leaves it up in the air in a way that I think is really good and makes you think, makes you keep thinking.
Oh, so that was another good one.
That was a good one.
It's another good one. I think that the end to Friends was also good. I'll say that as well.
It was all right. Yeah, it was nothing special.
Oh, but when he's like, did she get off the plane? Did she get off the plane? I got off the plane.
Oh, yeah, true. Everyone lost their mind over the Game of Thrones ending.
That wasn't very good.
Everyone was disappointed by that.
Yeah, that wasn't very good. There you go. That one also was not very good. It and the OC.
And the OC.
Ruined.
Well, Neighbours one was, it was a bit clunky, but it was very heartfelt. And if you'd ever watched, you'd be like, oh.
Well, in that case, let's give the last word to Susan Kennedy and Dr. Carl Kennedy, a.k.a. Alan Fletcher and Jackie Woodburn.
It's meant a happy life.
Yeah, it's given us enormous opportunities, work opportunities and personal opportunities. And, you know this, but the greatest artistic pleasure I've had is working with Jackie. It's been... It's really been remarkable. She's a beautiful, beautiful actress, probably one of the best in the country, and I've fed off that for 28 years.
Right back at you, my friend. Right back at you.
Oh, that's so lovely. Bye, Carl. Bye, Susan.
R.I.P. Look, they don't die in the end. They don't die in the end.
Spoiler.
Sorry.
We're going to get all our flash drivers will be like, guys, that show finished 15 years ago and I've not caught up with it. I've had that before. Everyone yelling at me about something that I've said and they're like, spoiler.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you've had your time. You have had your time. J.Law, what should we give a quick shout out to for flash drivers to catch on Flash this week?
Well, it's Missing Persons Week, and so we've decided to shine a light onto that this week. And I know you did some really interesting interviews. They were quite emotional in the end.
Really emotional interviews. We spoke with the sisters of a couple of missing men, Nathan Brosnan and Paul Anthony Baker, about what it's like to have a loved one who has gone missing. You didn't know that they were going to go missing, and then 1 minute they're there, the next minute they're out of your life. And they were very, very open and honest with me about whether or not they thought that they would see their brother again, whether or not they thought that they were still alive. And it's just such an unimaginable situation unless you're in it. So definitely one not to miss. I have to recommend everyone watching those interviews because the women were just so heartbreaking and really open and honest about this impossible situation.
You can check that out on Flash now. And if you know anything about it, it's recommended you call Crime Stoppers.
Neighbours. Everybody's good. That's our night done. J.Law, we're just going to be here singing the Neighbours theme song. Can I just say, though, of theme songs, it's really good.
It's a bit daggy, though.
No, but everyone knows it.
Sure.
When everybody knows your name. Like,
That's
everyone.
not what it says.
Is that not what it
That's
says?
not the lyrics.
Oh.
No.
Everyone knows it, J.Law. It is. That's what it is. Anyway, really great to have you back, J.Law. No need to fact check me. And also, please do put all of your annual leave requests through myself because I did not sanction the last fortnight. Just so you're aware.
Noted for future reference.
That's right. And you go off to a mud festival. My goodness. Glad you survived.
I promise I'll never go again.
You heard it here, Flash Drivers. You heard it here. If you enjoy the news and this podcast and want to learn more about Flash, you can sign up at flashnews.com.au. Flash lets you stream more than 25 news channels in one place. New customers get 14 days free, so start streaming your news today.